I want to thank everybody for joining me today. I'm very excited to have on Gregg Marcel Dixon. A lot of people have been asking me to speak to this brother who is running against Jim Clyburn in South Carolina's 6th District. I'm very happy to finally have this brother on. Marcel, would you like to introduce yourself to the people?
Hello, everyone. Well, you already told them my name, Gregg Marcel Dixon. I am a native of South Carolina, born in Savannah, Georgia, but raised right across the bridge in South Carolina, and I am running against James Clyburn on a full reparations platform. The motto and driving principle behind my campaign is repair Black America in order to fix America. So for me, Black America, and when I say Black America, I'm referring to those of us who are descendants of those who were enslaved by the American government, to whom I will refer to as freedmen, because that's our congressional name, looking at the congressional precedent, to receive reparations. They come first in my campaign.
Now, what I want to do before we really get this interview underway, for the viewing audience, this is going to be a bit lengthy, but I do feel that it's important for the people to get the full context of the conversation that you actually had with Jim Clyburn back in July of last year. You had a conversation with him. You met with him at a town hall, and you pressed him on a few issues. And I really want people to understand and see that this brother is very much so well read. He understands the conditions of our people in this country, specifically when we're talking about the descendants of American slavery, or as Marcel prefers to call, freedmen, right? But I also want to take this moment also to let it highlight how visibly upset, condescending, and borderline disrespectful Jim Clyburn gets whenever he's pressed on these issues. This is something, behavior pattern from him that is very consistent, that I've showed on this channel multiple times. So, like I said, this is going to be about roughly 7 minutes long, but it's important that we get this in its full context, and then we'll get the interview underway.
Thank you, Congressman Clyburn, for coming. Too often the politicians that say they speak for us never want to speak to us. So I think we should thank him for being here. We should thank him for being here. Congressman Clyburn, I love this handout, but it's missing one thing, and I'm going to try not to get emotional, but I want to read it. In 2019, the average, and I know you know these statistics, the average wealth of the average white American family is $188,000. For Black American families, it's only $24,000. Now, I'm Gullah, okay? 80% of rural land, Black land ownership, has been lost since 1969. A white high school dropout has more wealth than a Black college graduate. Per the Accountable USA and the Food and Research Action Center, your district and the district I've grown up in is the 6th poorest district in the United States of America.
Which district? The 6th district?
South Carolina District 6. Now, there's a quote, and maybe that's not true, but there's a quote.
That's not true.
There's a quote that says, I do not, but they backed it up with census data, but there's a quote that says, I do not buy the concept popular in the 1960s, which said, we have suppressed the Black man for 300 years, and the white man is now far ahead in the race for everything our society offers. In order to even the score, we must now give the Black man a head start, or even hold the white man back to even the race. I don't buy that. I'll be damned if I pay for the sins of my forefathers. I don't feel responsible for the sins of my forefathers. I just feel responsible for now. Now, hearing that quote, y'all might think I'm talking about Donald Trump. No, that was Joe Biden. Now, Congressman, you said we know Joe and Joe knows us. And Joe Biden told us that he would have our backs. But since being in office, Joe Biden has signed executive action for Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. He has signed executive action for LGBTQ citizens. He has done executive action for Native Americans. But where's his executive action for Black Americans? Now, what a lot of people may not realize, I don't know, because I just learned this. Funny thing, Joe Biden got in office and he repealed a lot of stuff Donald Trump did. For a man who said he wasn't concerned with the sins of forefathers, he's sure repealing past sins of Donald Trump. But what about the biggest sin and the original sin this country committed, which was the brutal enslavement of my people? And after slavery, the race massacres, the violent discrimination that kept us in poverty, the land theft, okay? We, Black Americans, now, since 1865, Black Americans own only 0.5 wealth in America. Today, we own less than 3%. Since slavery, not much has changed. Joe Biden could easily do executive action and bring back the Freedmen's Bureau, whose job was to close all disparities between Black Americans, who are descendants of freedmen, and white Americans. Joe Biden, with just a stroke of a pen, can start a commission to study reparations and implement them. You are a representative. We can't show up everywhere. People say, well, Black people need to organize. We've been organizing since the 1500s. These other groups come in like Asian Americans, and within a few months, they get bills for them. It's your job to speak up for us. So you said we know Joe and Joe knows us. I don't care what type of heart Joe has. I care about the policies Joe is going to pass. So why is it, Congressman Clyburn, that you do not support reparations and you do not push Joe Biden to at least bring back the Freedmen's Bureau to close all disparities between white Americans and Black Americans? We talk about a crisis at the border. What about the crisis in Black America? That was the difference is the crisis in Black America was inflicted on us externally. America was built on our backs, and we still hold this country up on our backs. It's broken every bone in our bodies, and yet it keeps up with our strength. Okay, well, can you please explain why you haven't pushed them then on executive action, specific policies for your people, Black Americans? That's my question, because I don't get it.
What makes you think I haven't?
Because we haven't seen it. I see you on the news, and you talk about every other issue, AAPI, LGBTQ. I watch you. I follow you just to see if you're going to mention Black American issues, and you don't.
Have you ever heard of HR 40?
Yes. HR 40, yes, that lacks direct cash payments and has no specific, that lacks direct cash payments. It lacks specific policies that Black Americans are supposed to get. It's just a study, but what policy is it specifying for us?
When do you start?
We start with the minimum that Black Americans are supposed to get.
Answer the question. Now, where would you start?
I would start with the minimum, that a reparations policy for Black Americans.
How do you know what the minimum is?
I'm trying to answer your question. You gonna let me answer it? Where would I start?
Tell me what the minimum is.
The minimum, there's a book called From Here to Equality that you have a copy of because the Mystic Branch NAACP sent you a copy because I called your office. The minimum is explained in that book. At least $11 trillion, direct cash payments, land allotment, tax exemption, free education, the Freedmen's Bureau returning to close all disparities. That's the minimum. Okay. This country can't bring back all the people they've taken from us, but they can at least make a big down payment, like the $65 billion, give us our $65 trillion.
Okay.
I'm running out of space. I'm running out of space.
6550 is a down payment. 10, 20, 30 is a down payment. Yes. The American Rescue Act is a down payment.
Specific for us.
Other down payments.
Those are universal. Those are universal policies. We're talking about specifics for Black Americans.
What
is
being done for us, like the easy got something for them?
Like what? Rescue Act.
Now, as we can all see, Jim Clyburn responded very condescendingly, borderline disrespectfully, and very disingenuously, without me standing on my soapbox too much because this is about Marcel. I've covered on multiple occasions how, like he said, the 10, 20, 30 plan was a reparations down payment. I've covered on this channel in great detail to the point to which he actually took his report down offline to where the 10, 20, 30 plan was literally millions upon millions of dollars that went to majority non-Black communities, majority non-Black cities, majority white, majority Native American communities. So that had nothing to do with the descendants of American slavery. And we all know as well that the American Rescue Plan was not a reparations down payment. Now, with that being said, Marcel, after your encounter with Jim Clyburn, what is it that led you to the point to say, you know what, I'm going to be the one that runs against him? Because I don't think that was your initial intention going in, nor your initial intention even coming out of that conversation. So what is it that led you to that point?
Well, first of all, it was his, as you mentioned, his condescending, disrespectful attitude. But more than that, it was his dismissiveness. What you did not see during that same exchange was about 30 minutes later, he was confronted by a few other black men who I'm sure are freedmen, descendant of American slaves. And one guy was trying to speak to him about how some of the most violent criminals are being released on parole into black communities, whereas black men who commit very low-level offenses are being put in jail for months without getting a trial hearing. He pretty much blew them all, so that's a local matter. Deal with that. Another black family, Gullah Geechee, as am I, they spoke to him about how their yard floods and how they have to still take boats, because there are some people in areas where I live who still have to have boats when it rains. Imagine that. Once upon a time, that's why everyone got around. But there are still people who have to use that mode of transportation to get out their yards. They also mentioned, however, how the expansion of the port here is going to result in their ancestors, our ancestors, having their graves excavated and having them moved. And Clyburn pretty much told him that's a local matter. I guess the Environmental Protection Agency has no sway in anything. And a lady then came to him. She was of Hispanic ethnicity. I don't know what race she wants to classify herself. You know, they'll be black on Monday when they think we're going to get benefits from something. They get the benefits, then they go back to being white on Thursday. So I have no idea how she would classify herself racially, but she was a Hispanic woman. And hearing amidst all this freedmen, black American pain, she brings up the DACA recipients. And how does Clyburn responds? He just perks and comes to life. Was he dismissive to her as he was to me? No. Did he take umbrage at her bringing up illegal immigrants who are in this country illegally? No, he did not. He came to life. It was so bad that another young black guy noticed it and cut her off. And she was like, hey, this is about us right now. So once I saw his dismissiveness, and after that, hearing people who are reparationists, as I consider myself, who had a lot more resources than I and a lot more acumen than I, hearing them say that they were going to run on a reparations platform, and I was simply waiting for them to do it, because I'm a type of person, if somebody's doing something for my people in regards to reparations, I am going to show up. If I can't show up, I'm going to donate. If I can't donate, I'm going to tell other people about it. I'm going to defend it. I'm going to help organize it. And a lot of times I do all of the above. So I was just waiting for someone else, I guess, to take the lead. When I finally saw that wasn't going to happen, I decided that I, even though I have no money, not from a powerful family, my family struggles to keep their head above water. I'm a teacher, so I struggle. And I have no protection. Whatever lies may put out there about me, I have to defend myself on my own merits. I said, in spite of all of that, I was going to put myself out there as my ancestors have before. I said, because I'll be damned if the Democrats, the Republicans, everyone acknowledges they're anti-black. But we don't talk about the anti-blackness of the modern-day Democratic Party, which makes them worse because they get our votes. We don't vote for the Republicans. We give our votes to the Democrats, and we get the same disrespect and neglect in return. And I said I was not just going to sit back and watch it happen. And that's when I said I was going to run.
Now, to take a step back a little bit, if I'm not mistaken, in your interview with Philip Scott on African Diaspora News Channel, you said you weren't originally involved in politics until you got into contact with the reparations movement. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that? And what was it about the reparations movement that made you make the decision to say, you know what, I need to dive in a little bit more into politics?
Yes, my religious background, my mother and my grandmother, to whom I was very close, my mother's mother, were Jehovah's Witnesses. And we were always taught about neutrality. And I'm a very skeptical person. When someone comes to me with anything, I want you to prove it. I want you to be able to prove it by references, and I want it to make sense, and I want it to be based on logic. And my studies with the witnesses, that's everything. Everything they was able to prove, and I saw that by and large, as a group, they practiced what they preached. However, the neutrality part was eating me alive. I was seeing my people being abused, government sanctioned, not just overt, outright anti-Black terrorism as in the past, which still happens, but this time by neglect by that same government that terrorized us to fix the issues they caused. I could not remain neutral, but I did not want to get involved in politics still. I was trying to find a way to get involved with advocating for my people without getting involved in politics. So I was trying to get a bill written on the state level and hopefully eventually on the federal level to make Black history, Black American history, especially Black American inventors, mandatory for students to be taught. I was ignored by state representatives. I was ignored by state senators. And that just embittered me. I decided to try to call the NAACP. Not only were they dismissive, they were nasty and rude. Al Sharpton's Rainbow Coalition, they responded to my call. I had a wonderful conversation with the lady for at least about 2 hours, but they were so overwhelmed with the issues in Savannah, Georgia, because the branch for my area is in Savannah, Georgia, that they would not have been to assist me, not in the way that I needed. So I finally tried to reach out to James Clyburn's office. And I guess, stupid me, I thought that when they said they'll get back in contact with you, they meant it. And when that didn't happen, and I kept calling, and they kept telling me the same lie, and it kept happening, I said, so this is really, people say politicians lie, and I see what they're talking about. I said, but this man works for me. So I was determined to show him that he was not going to ignore me. So I tried to find him on Twitter and came across a video of him being confronted by reparationists. And when I came across the ADOS hashtag and I saw the data, I always knew that Black Americans were not doing well in this country. But I have to admit, when I said Black Americans, I used to just include all Black people. I knew that there was a difference between Black Americans and a Black person from Jamaica, from Haiti, Brazil, whatever. But when I saw the data disaggregated, in the few studies that actually disaggregate them, and I saw just how bad off we were. The statistic that really got me was that in 2016, I believe it was, the average white American family had a net worth of $191,000. But the average Black American family, and this is including Black immigrants who tend to have a higher net worth than people of my lineage have, who are freedmen, descendants of American slaves, had only $16,000 net worth at the high end. When I saw that, and then I saw on the news all these policies being done for LGBTQ, Native Americans, Asian Americans, illegal immigrants who are not even citizens, cannot vote, and I don't care what anyone says, do not pay taxes or have not paid nearly as much as we have, because Black Americans have been paying taxes and then some for centuries. The disgust builds up in me. And I confronted Pete Buttigieg and Tom Steyer and Joe Cunningham. And I confronted a few other reparations groups like NARC and NCOBRA. And I worked my way up to Clyburn. And when I finally confronted him, to be dismissed in that manner, only for him to later on put out a tweet about something dealing with illegal immigrants, I said, absolutely not. Not going to take it. I may not have any political experience. I said, but I know what's right. I know what's wrong. And I said, hell, if he has been in Congress for 30 years and his district is the 6th poorest, and now I've discovered it's the 3rd poorest for children out of 435. If this is what experience gets us, then hell, I might as well give it a go as well, because he might have experience, but I promise you, I'm going to be effective.
Now, I also want to address the fact that on that same interview, you said something very interesting that I actually agreed with. But when it comes to reparations, there are many people, some out there that say, well, and when I say many people, I'm talking about other Black Americans, and to be more specific, freedmen, descendants of American slavery, that says, you know, I get it. We deserve it. We're entitled to it. We need it. But it's a lost cause. It's a waste of time. And I remember you making the statement, and correct me if I'm wrong, on the interview with Philip Scott, where you said, that's cowardly. So can you please explain why it's cowardly? Elaborate on that, your mind frame behind that, to say it's cowardly to say that's never going to happen. We're never going to get reparations. We need to move on from that and try to figure something else out.
Well, I'm trying to think of a time in this country's history. I'm talking about from our origins as British colonies to now, where we as Black Americans have not been told that's something to which we were entitled, or that's something to which we were fighting to accomplish that we should already had, where we have not been told it ain't going to happen. If anybody reads the biography, and I always mention Harriet Tubman, that she wrote about how when she was going through escape, her own brothers told her it was never going to happen. And yet it happened. When we fought for abolition in that same era, we was told that slavery was never going to end. And even though I know people like to say, well, there's still mass incarceration and things like that, chattel slavery has ended. During the civil rights movement, which really we can argue we've been fighting for civil rights since we've been here, but during the civil rights movement, people like Fannie Lou Hamer and Martin Luther King Jr. were all told that the anti-Black legislation on the books, government sanctioned, was never going to end. And yet that legislation was done away with. Obviously, we still have many disparities as a result of that. And that brings my point now. We're now being told by some of people of my own lineage that reparations is never going to happen. And I can't help but say this sounds oh so familiar. So there's always been two types of people when it comes to Black American movements for justice. The ones that say it ain't going to happen, and the ones that say yes it is, and watch me. The funny thing is, the ones that say it ain't going to happen, when it does happen, they want to benefit from it when it does. So I say it's cowardly because it is going to happen. And when reparations happens, I guarantee you that the people who said it wasn't and their descendants are going to benefit from it. Because the funny thing is, when people say, let's come up with a waiver, and if you say reparations is not going to happen, please sign it. And when it does happen, you get nothing. People always reject that proposal. So it is cowardly. And it's hypocritical in many cases as well.
Now, do you feel like in any way your campaign being so, for lack of better words, pro-Black, right? Or pro-freedmen, do you worry that that's going to have a negative impact on your campaign against Jim Clyburn? A lot of people would probably tell you, and I'm sure they've told you already, maybe Marcel, you should scale it back a little bit. Don't be so Black. Don't be so for your people. Outwardly, but scale it back a little bit, and then when you get in there, now you make your move. So can you speak to that a little bit? Do you have any concerns about that?
No, I do not, because I said I would rather stand and fail, because when you fall, you were standing up. I would rather stand for what I believe in than to sell out for which I do not. And I say that. Yes, people have come to me and say, oh, you're LGBTQ. Why don't you add that to your platform? I tell them no, that I don't identify with that. And no, I'm not doing that. And people have said to me, well, you got to come up with a platform that appeals to Black, brown, yellow, and red. And I tell them the only color out of that group with which I am concerned is Black. And of Black, the specific lineage and ethnicity is freedmen. James Clyburn's district is 60% Black. Okay? So in reality, I'm speaking to the needs of the majority here. My platform's model is Repair Black America to Fix America. That's to let everyone know what they should already know, that what helps Black America will help all. That being said, I'm not playing that game of universal policies or rising boat lifts all people. The policies on my platform, the better deal for Black America, I really should call it a deal for Black Americans. We ain't never had no deal, not a good one at least, is all specifically for Black Americans, for freedmen. And it's unfair in a sense because people have asked me, well, what do you say to white Americans who say, what's in this for me? And I always think I shouldn't have to explain a damn thing to white Americans because not once during all the times where the government invested billions, trillions in modern day amounts in white Americans from the Homestead Act of 1781, from the Homestead Act of the 1800s, from the GI Bill, from the New Deal, of which Black Americans were excluded, from the Social Security Act, you name it. Not once did anyone ask white Americans, well, what are you going to say to Black Americans to help them understand this is good for them too? Not once were white Americans asked to explain why policies that were benefiting them, from which we should have benefited, but we were excluded from, not once were they asked to explain how we should feel about that or why it would help us. So now that we're not asking, this is a demand. Now that we're demanding what we are owed, okay? What we are owed. People ask me, well, how would you explain this to that person? I explain it this way. Reparations is a debt owed, okay? And you don't have to agree with it, but that doesn't change the fact that it is the truth. So what I'm not going to do is argue back and forth with people. And what I will also say is that anytime a person has stood up for Black Americans in this country, it's always been met with a lack of popularity, even when it's been the right thing. How in the world could anyone have defended chattel slavery on any grounds, moral, religious, spiritual? How could they? But they did. It was the right thing to do, but it was a debate because it was for us. Same thing when it came to rescinding anti-Black policies. So I don't feel it's a hindrance because it is not the problem. If it is a hindrance, it's because of the messed up attitudes that too many people in this country, white and Black, have towards Black Americans freedmen. But that's not my problem. That's theirs. I'm going to press forward because my saying is that a leader should not concern themselves, a good leader should not concern themselves with what is popular. A leader should not concern themselves with what is easy. A good leader should only concern themselves with what is right. And what I am doing is the right thing.
And also too, and what you saying that I wish I had this study on hand just to show that it exists, and there are actually multiple studies and research papers that prove this, is that closing the racial wealth gap would actually benefit the United States tremendously from a financial standpoint. Reparations.
Oh, I know the study.
Oh, please speak on it a little bit, please.
One study showed that anti-Black racism has cost the United States $16 trillion. Another study that was just published not so long ago has shown that it's cost Black Americans, freemen, because we're the ones that went through the depravity, the violence, the savagery, the injustice, the violent discrimination, the humiliation, the ostracization. We're the ones that went through it. It's cost us $70 trillion. That being said, Black Americans overall put $3 trillion into the economy. Now, I'm not a person who says because we have such high spending power, that means we have so much wealth. No, because we really look into that study, that really just shows how much money we have before taxes, before bills, before medical needs and things of that nature. But if we put that much into the American economy, and another study shows that infrastructure built by those who were enslaved, my ancestors, still brings in trillions of dollars for this country. A lot of inventions that Black Americans have invented or pioneered, such as one that we're using right now, voice over internet protocol, that was innovated by Marion Croak, a Black woman, a freedman woman who is still alive, contributes greatly to not just this country, but the world. Just imagine what we could have done and what we will do when we get what is owed to us. it is unfair in a sense because, like I said, we never benefited from things that were given to others. We never benefited from all the trillions that white Americans had invested in them. We don't benefit from the reservations that Native Americans have in their tax exempt status. Matter of fact, the freedmen that actually have Native American ancestry, they have to fight, and they're still fighting to get their access to the rights and privileges to which they are entitled. So it's quite unfair that people will benefit from our reparations, but they will.
Now, I want to, before we get into some of the policies that you have structured out on your website, I want to address two, you can say, kind of concerns that some people may have it with you running, right? And I'll put them both together in one kind of question. Number one, and correct me if I'm not mistaken, you're running as a Democrat, and
Yes.
some people might feel, and they have the question, well, we know that the Democrats don't really have our best interest. They don't have our backs. Why would you run as a Democrat versus running independent? And secondly, as an LGBTQ man, there are some people that have their reservations with that because they feel that, okay, he's LGBTQ. How do we know that once he gets into office, he's not going to pivot and start advocating for a multitude of LGBTQ policies, but not policies for descendants of American slavery? Or how do we know that he's not going to do like so many others do, which is conflate the two? So how do you get around that? How do you answer to that?
Well, first of all, as far as the party goes, neither party is for black people, okay? And nor are the independents that are up there right now. I always say this, and I've said this before, I'm going to say it again. Black Americans, we built this nation. We can go wherever the hell we want to go. We can live where the hell we want to live. I'm a proponent for us coming back to the Southeast, but we have a right to live wherever we want to live. We can say whatever the hell we want to say about this nation, okay? Because that's our right. As the people whose blood is literally in this soil, who did the labor, not just physically, but also intellectually. I like to say that to correlate it with the modern day Democratic Party. Black Americans are the most loyal Democratic voters, okay? Over 90% of us vote for the Democrats. So in a sense, we have built and sustained the modern day Democratic Party. So I call the Democrats names. I call them Demorats. I call some of the black Democrats coons. And if the shoe fits, wear it. And I don't call them coons because I don't like them. I call them coons based on their record, which adds up to them being a coon. But I can say that because it's my people that get y'all in power over there. Okay? So because we keep the party in power and we sustain them, and we have since the 1960s, and that's been what, 50 years, and we've gotten nothing back from it. Even the civil rights legislation was heavily flawed. Affirmative action, all those things should have been for us. But white women are the main benefactors of affirmative action by far. Other groups have leaped past us because of legislation of affirmative action. Okay? The Democratic Party owes us. Okay? Their house is built literally on our backs, our money, our efforts. I'm going in there to make them pay us what we're due. When a house is filthy, you can't clean it from the outside. When I would be playing outside, my mother would tell me to clean up. She would say, you can't clean it from the outside. That applies here. You can't clean the house up from the outside. And before anyone says, well, I know they're thinking, well, how you want to get them to do it? How you want to get them to do it? Please stop asking me that. No one's ever done what I'm doing right now. And that brings to my second point. Show me a person in modern times that has run on not just a pro-black agenda, but pro-freedmen agenda. You already asked the question, is it causing me issues? And I've already said my agenda isn't causing me issues. It's people with their anti-Black American attitudes that cause me issues. Or they have an issue with my agenda. I am running on a platform on which no Democrat in office right now, past or present in our modern times, has ever ran upon. I could have easily if the case that I'm going to go there and pioneer LGBTQ issues and women issues, I could have round that platform, because I guess most people would agree it will be easier, because they can't say that both parties are anti-Black and then see me running on a platform that puts Black Americans first, and then turn around and say, well, I'm going to sell out when I get there. If I'm going to sell, I will sell out now and have a platform that will be more palatable to this country, which anti-Blackness is built into its fabric. But the fact is that I'm running on my platform. I stood my ground on my platform, and I've defended my platform, and I have policies on which I'm running, meaning that I am putting faith enough in my platform that people are going to vote for me and send me to the House with the platform and policies I am pushing now.
Now, let's get into some of those policies that you'll be pushing for. I want to start first, and I think this is very important. I want to start first with, what can the people in District 6 expect from you when you win and you enter into office?
They could expect me to hold them accountable as well. They can expect me to fight for them and stand up for them. I always say a leader is not just what they accomplish. A leader is also what he or she fights to accomplish. So they can expect me to do what has not been done in modern times. And this is going to be like 50% of the battle, just to stand up and show that they are worth fighting for. But they can also expect me to call them out. You don't just send me to Congress and say, okay, there you go, do what you need to do. No, I need them to have my backs as well. I would need them that when I put a bill forward to address the needs of them, the Black Americans in my district first and foremost, they need to be willing to call and flood any congressman or congresswoman's office who does not co-sponsor. They need to be able to knock on doors. They will need to donate because the Democratic Party is going to try to challenge me again. They're going to have to donate so I can run again, because I need to be there for a good specific amount of time to get done all the things that I'm going to fight and I am going to get done. So they can expect somebody to fight for them. They can expect someone's going to be accessible to them. I already have a lot of people tell me, wow, I write you on Twitter or I email you. Emails, not so much, but on Twitter, and you write right back. People say I'm very accessible. That's what I believe how things should be. I believe if I represent you, I should be accessible to speak and engage with you. So they can expect that, but then they also expect I'm going to be calling them out to help as well. Because even though I'm going to be up there fighting for them alone, I can't fight for them alone.
Concerning what's happening in South Carolina, I want to speak to something real quick, and I want to pull it up on your website. It's in the We Deserve Better page, if I'm not mistaken, that goes through all your plans and the campaign promises that you have that you wish to fulfill while in office. And one that stuck out to me was in the Better Education portion, where you stated that in the Better Education campaign promise portion, you put that there is a place called the Corridor of Shame in South Carolina, or South Carolina is the home of the Corridor of Shame. What is the Corridor of Shame, and how do you plan to fix that?
The Corridor of Shame, I used to hate that name, by the way, but I don't know if I said it on my website or not, but I know I've said it before. I embrace that name now because it is shameful. The Corridor of Shame refers to extremely impoverished, majority Black counties along South Carolina's I-95 corridor, which my county, where I have lived my entire life, where I currently live, and the district from where I attended is located in, is a part of that. In fact, my district is the lowest performing district in South Carolina. And South Carolina has at times usually hovers around 47th, 48th, educationally speaking, as far as all 50 states go. So the Corridor of Shame is an extremely impoverished region of South Carolina where students experience long-standing academic failure that is in large part connected to the high levels of poverty. And the way I plan to change that, you mentioned my education platform, so I will talk about it from there. The problem with the American school system, and America is very unique in this regard, is that schools are funded by their property taxes. So the amount of property taxes a county gets from their land
is what they use to fund their schools. But that's stupid, because if I'm a kid who lives in a poor county, which I did and I still do, and the county next to me, Beaufort County, which is one of the richest counties in South Carolina, if not the richest, they pay their land tax. They're going to have far more money than I. So their schools are going to get far more resources. And it's not just about textbooks and computers. It's field trips. It's opportunities to network. It's courses and classes and teachers they'll be able to hire. It's all type of dual enrollment. College professors they can bring to the school or pay for the kids to get to school. Things that my district struggles to afford. Every state should have a set amount where every kid could have a high quality education. But of course, every county cannot afford that. And I cannot control the state government. I can have dialogue with them, which I would want to do, but I can't control them. What I can do is write a bill for the federal government to make sure that if any county cannot meet that state standard, the federal government will then pay the remaining balance so that all kids in all counties, irrespective of where they live, because it's usually the blackest counties that have the most poverty, and that's by design, as we know, will be able to have a high quality education. Also, I will also use schools to feed the community. Okay? We should not have kids going to school hungry, nor leaving from there and being home hungry. The USDA already allots funding to schools to feed kids breakfast, lunch, and depending on the school day, a snack. And there are grants available for kids to take home food, but this should not be something left to grants and entities that fund it. The federal government can afford trillions of dollars for war to bail out large corporations, and I can go on and on and on. We could afford to feed our students and their families. We could afford to give teachers a pay raise, a large one, a starting salary of at least $60,000 to $65,000, and also support staff, which is receptionists, janitors, bus drivers, paraprofessionals, and more. So that's how I'm going to address the issues in the corridor of shame from an educational standpoint. That's some of the details.
Now, also concerning South Carolina, in that same portion of your website, you talk about how you want to establish better transportation. Now, some people like myself, me living in Los Angeles, I see something like that and, I don't really understand that. That doesn't compute to people like myself initially. So can you explain overall, like, what does that actually mean for the people of South Carolina and in the 6th district that you will be representing if you win, for you to fix transportation? Like, what does that actually mean for your district to do that?
My district is 97% rural and 3% urban. And most of America's population is urban, yet ironically most of America is rural, meaning that most of the land in America is uninhabited. We're really just concentrated in a lot of large metropolitan areas. Now, my metropolitan area is an urban area, at least the part where my county is located: Savannah, Georgia, Hills Head Island, South Carolina metropolitan area. But it's very rural. I have seen, and this happens all the time, I take my students on a field trip. This is a coastal area. We pass the ocean. We pass the saltwater river. Kids are oohing and ahhing, okay? Because they really get to leave their house to go even to the beach, or even to drive over to Savannah where you have to cross the Savannah River. I have had people in my family lose their job that, if they had a vehicle, will be 5 minutes away, but because they don't, they can't get to work. I've had people lose their job because they have to get their kids to the daycare, but they can only get your ride to work, and their job is located in the opposite direction. I have known people, I myself have gone through this, who have gone through the stress of trying to find a ride to work. I have a friend named Tyrone. He drives Uber, and he has told me that people from Savannah, there's a town right next to me between Savannah and my town named Ridgeland called Hardyville. And people from Hardyville and my town of Ridgeland too, he's told me, will call an Uber from Savannah, which from my area is like 30 minutes away, and from Hardyville is like a 15-minute, 20 minutes away, but will page an Uber
from Savannah to cross county lines, state lines, and come over here to South Carolina to take them just down the street. That's how desperate people are. When people do not have transportation, they can't even get to the basics: a doctor's appointment, school, daycare, their job. But what about the social capital? They can't go to a new museum that opened. They can't get to a well-paying job. They can't get to training for that well-paying job. So a lot of people who live in large urban areas, and I know every city is not New York City with taxes right out your door. Even New York City is not like that, because I've been there. I know a lot of cities do not have the type of public transportation infrastructure that cities like Philadelphia and New York City have. And I know other people can relate. But in a rural area, transportation is a huge, huge issue. I know so many people who have rarely ever left their homes for recreation, rarely ever been as far as 20 miles outside of where they live. It may sound crazy to people. It may sound like I'm exaggerating, but come down here and speak to people and you'll find out that I'm not. So my transportation plan, the same way the government can help people with acquiring a home, okay, and a down payment for a home, because a quality home is a necessity. I know that for the majority of Americans, a car is a necessity. People say transportation, they think about high-speed railways, which I support. But a vehicle is a necessity for many people who live throughout this country. So what I intend to do is working with the Department of Transportation. People who will qualify, those qualifications will be discussed, will be eligible to receive assistance for a down payment or full coverage for a down payment for their car in the first 3 months of their car payments covered, and also assistance with car maintenance, wear and tear, shocks, brakes, air filters, air pumps, carburetors, things of that nature.
And I think that's very important that you address that as well, because for those who have been paying attention, throughout the duration of this interview, you even stated earlier that when it rains hard enough, people in rural areas, they have to take a boat, literally a boat, to get from point A to point B, which is something that I can't even begin to fathom, me, like I said, living in Los Angeles. But like I said, it's important that you did address that, because people outside of these rural areas, we don't really tend to understand like how dire the needs are, for some of the people in these areas.
You know what's
Now,
crazy? I would
mhm,
say is that 90% of Black Americans at the turn of the 20th century lived in the deep rural South. So that's really our roots, Black Americans' freedom. And unfortunately, of course, things have gotten way better. But some of the same issues with poverty, lack of access to resources still exist, because the debt that this country owes us through reparations still exists.
now with that being said, I know that you've stated that you wanted to reestablish the Freedmen's Bureau. Now, explain, what would be the point of reestablishing a Freedmen's Bureau when we already have something like the Congressional Black Caucus?
I'm going to be kind. I'm not going to be so graphic. The Congressional Black Caucus is a name. You know, there are many variations of this saying, but it's not what you call, it's what you do that ultimately matters. They're called the Congressional Black Caucus, but on their very same webpage, they say they're there to advocate for the needs of a number of Black Americans that's far lower than our current number. According to the phony census, is around 50 million, but in reality, it's somewhere around 61 million. But they have a far lower number than that. But they also include people of color. Nah, we not no people of color. We Black. We freedmen. Okay? You don't run me over with a car and the paramedics come and they start giving everyone else attention and they leave me on the ground in pain. But that's literally what America has done. And the Congressional Black Caucus has done the same, because they're giving what should be done to us, the ones who are in need of repair for no fault of our own, they're giving it to these other people of color. Yet you go on the Asian American and Pacific Islander page, all they talk about are the needs of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. Native Americans, same thing, the different Native American tribes. The ones for the Hispanic caucus, all they talk about are Hispanics. And by the way, when they say Hispanics, they're not talking about Afro-Latinos, because we already see how they treat them. Matter of fact, I think you are of Haitian descent, so technically you're a Latino. But don't ask them if they consider you that, because they don't. So the Congressional Black Caucus is just their name. They have failed us, and it's not. No, I take that back. They have not failed us. They've chosen to neglect us, and they still do. So the Freedmen's Bureau, which if it would have been allowed to serve its purpose that it originally had, we would have had reparations already. We would have had the wealth from our land already. We would not have lost 14 million acres of property from 15 million in the 1950s to just a million now. We would have been able to use that property's equity and develop wealth. But because they were not able to do what they were meant to do because of anti-Blackness, and because of a lack of special class protection that we as freemen, descendants of American slaves, deserve, they were sabotaged. So I'm going to bring the Freedmen's Bureau back so they can do what they were originally supposed to do, close all disparities between us and white Americans, the other group that has been in this country almost as long as we have. The crazy thing is, though, the average Black American has been an American far longer than the average white American, because we have not had such a huge influx of immigrants in our population. So the Freedmen's Bureau will be our advocate. If there are disparities, wage discrimination, or issues that are happening, they will be the arm that will champion our causes alongside our representatives that will do so as well, especially once I get up there.
Now, I want to go back to the We Deserve Better portion of your website. And I strongly suggest for those of you watching, I'll leave the link in the description below. Make sure you go to marcelforcongress.com. There's only so much you can go through in a interview. And there's so much that was discussed in the We Deserve Better portion concerning what Marcel intends to do once he gets into office. So I strongly suggest you go and you read through that whole page to see the list of things there. But one of the things that stood out to me the most, and that I feel is extremely important that no one ever discusses or talks about, is that you want to establish a commission to specifically review and immediately address the unique challenges facing Black men and boys. Can you please elaborate on that, please?
So, let the Democrats tell it. You would think there's this war between Black women and Black men. No, it ain't. I've spoken to hundreds of South Carolinians throughout my life and as a candidate. And one of the main things, even my mother loves all of her children, okay? My two brothers and my sister. So, and of course, she loves my sister to death as well. There ain't no competition. Yet my mother worries about all of us, but she worries about us, her sons, even more than she worries about our sister. And I get that same response from so many Black women, Black American women, and even Black women who are of immigrant background that have had children here. Not just that. You look at the data. Of course, our Black women and girls need protection also. But whatever disparity there exists, Black boys are always far more represented. The number of gun deaths, far, far higher for Black boys out of all groups. Suicide rates have gone up for Black children, have skyrocketed, but for Black boys are now the most likely to commit suicide. I might get the range wrong, but between ages 3 to 12, even more likely than white boys. Which, historically speaking, that's very unheard, that's unprecedented in this nation. Black men have the highest unemployment rate than any other group. Black men are the most likely to be wrongly convicted and wrongly arrested. Black men are the most likely of men to experience mental emotional disorders, but the least likely to have access to mental health care. And even though they say women are more likely to experience emotional and mental disorders, if you read any study that says that, they will always make it clear because women are most likely to express how they feel and seek help, where our men seem to suffer in silence. Black men have much higher rates of drug abuse, alcohol abuse, and self-destructive behaviors. But yet, look at black men in the media and we're demonized. And whereas black women and girls, of course, do not get any shoulder to cry on either, it is more socially acceptable for a black woman and girl to say what she's going through and get a compassionate response than black men and boys. This commission is not just going to be a shoulder on which they can cry. It's going to identify why we are always overrepresented in the worst statistics. It's going to aggressively develop and implement solutions. There's gonna be no just talking about it, and we ain't gonna take all day either. And then we're gonna see that what helps black men and boys will help black women and girls. But I want to repeat though, even though it won't just be a shoulder on which they can cry, it is going to be an arm of the government that's going to be there for black men and boys so they can know someone is looking out for them. And I don't know any black woman or black girl, unless they're just some, bitter Betty, who will have a problem with that.
Now, also going back to the We Deserve Better portion of your website, you have a string of policies, and this is the portion where you can say it's for the most part would be the universal policies, right? And what I find interesting while going through these policies is that you don't come across as being either on the left or on the right, which I think is very unique about you, because most people are either hard right or hard left. So in some instances, as I'm going through it right now, you want to introduce a federally mandated livable wage that corresponds to the cost of a person's geographic area. You also want to make Medicare available as an option for all individuals to have quality medical care, not just for physical health, but mental and emotional health. And I could go on and on and on how you want to install a federally mandated database of officers that have committed infractions so that they are not simply transferred from one precinct to another. Many hear that, or they'll read it off themselves and they go, okay, this brother's on the left. But then as you continue to read on, you have sections where you say you want to ban all abortions, with the exception of certain circumstances to protect the unborn children, as well as you want to eliminate all illegal immigration and fine any employer that hires illegal immigrants. Now, when it comes to the sections you can say that are on the left, many of us may kind of automatically understand that, right? But when it comes to you wanting to ban all abortion, with the exception of certain circumstances, can you elaborate on why that is that you want to do that? Why are you on that side of the spectrum concerning abortion?
Well, I look at historical precedent and I look at what's currently happening. The historical precedent, I want someone to name one group en masse that has come to this country and has become an ally of Black American freedmen, the descendants of American slaves. It has never happened, and it's not happening now. Even if people say, well, they took posters out and they went on the street and marched for y'all, that's one thing. You can march for us. But what I need you to do is capitalize on your voting power for us. When you get to a point where you say, I'm not voting until y'all pass reparations for Black Americans, freedmen, then you're not an ally. What you did was performative. I also want to say that people like to say there is no study showing that immigration has had a detrimental effect on Black Americans, and that's a lie. There are several studies, and there are several articles. There are several experiences where ICE has raided factories, different facilities, and the next day there were Black Americans lined up to do the very same jobs that we have been told that no American wants to do. That has always been a lie, because before the illegal immigrants came here, we were the ones doing those jobs. Now, what we demand, however, and what we won't do, we demand a fair wage, and we're not going to work for a wage that is less than what we know is fair, because we fought for our civil rights and we're still damn fighting for them. Another fact is Black Americans have the least amount of wealth. As of now, white Americans are around 200,000 net worth, and Black Americans are around 24,000. We're to the bottom. And our wealth has also grown the slowest. People who just entered this nation, even illegally, within 2 years or 3, surpass us in our wealth. We're to the bottom, scraping for resources in a country we built, and we should have the priority. When you bring in another group of people who may or may not have college degrees, and if they do, it's not valid in this country, they are going to be scrapping for resources as well. When there's limited amount of quality homes available, or there's a limited amount of jobs available that a person can get without a college degree, and most Americans do not have college degrees, and with Black Americans, it's a little over 20%, something like that. Which group is going to be hurt the most? It does not take a genius to figure out which group. And I also want to ask people, picture this, okay? You are at a party. It's your party. You've invited people. You invited 12 of your friends. But all of a sudden, 50 others show up who you did not invite. And now you have to find food to feed them. And you starve, and everyone else starves because you're trying to feed them. The little bit of resources you had are gone. Would you say to that person who had the party and invited a certain amount of guests, if they say to the ones who were uninvited, you have to go, sorry, this is my party, I only have a certain amount of resources, and I don't have enough resources right now that I can use to help y'all. You should have done it the right way. You should have only came, you had an invitation from me, or you could have asked if you could come, but you did not do that. Who in their right mind would say that person is wrong? I don't think anyone would. Likewise, in this country, Black Americans have the full brunt of the law thrown at us. As I just said, we are the most likely to be arrested for things we didn't even do. 70% of the people who are later found innocent for crimes that they were convicted of and went to prison for doing are Black men. So that means nearly the majority of people who are wrongly arrested are Black men. How many Black men do we see being freed decades later after spending decades of their life in jail for things they didn't do? It happens all the time. So we get the book of the law thrown at us so fiercely that we even go to jail for things we did not do. But people in the country illegally should be rewarded for that? No. But I'm not going to go after them. I'm going to go after the employers who are taking advantage of them. They should be fined. They should be fined heavily. And if the practice continues, there should be criminal action taken against them. So I'm putting Black America first. And I know that's very unusual for people to hear, but I am.
Now, can you speak to the abortion part as well? Because you are against abortion. And like I said, for some of us in our community that lean towards the left or consider themselves to be progressives, they may feel, why would you be against abortion? So please speak against that, or speak to that, I should say.
You know what? I want to say, and I've shared this experience before, one of my best and my fondest memories of my great-grandmother, when I was helping her plant some trees. Some were trees, and I was planting seeds. And when I look at that tree that I helped her plant, it makes me nostalgic. I think about it all the time, but especially when I see that tree. When that tree was just a little shrub, she would always tell us, if we were riding our bikes or playing in the yard or playing with our dogs, don't go near that tree. You're going to kill it before it even gets a chance to grow. I have been out and pulled over the side of the road, and people have come out and say, hey, get off my grass, man. Or, hey, don't walk across there. I'm planting things there. Don't kill them. if we as people, and I'm willing to bet anyone, a lot of people who are against abortion, who have a nice lawn, planted trees, if you were to just walk across their lawn and walk across their plants, they would say, hey, get off my lawn. You're about to kill my plants, man. You're killing my flowers. People get very protective of a plant that is growing because they want to see it blossom. They want to see it grow. How much more so should we not be protective of a fetus that will grow to become a child, a black child? I am of the idea that if a process has been set in motion and that process is going to lead to a precious life, then stopping that process is tantamount, in my mind, of stopping the production and the advent of life. And the black community has already had 20 million abortions. We can't get our white liberal allies to come out and fight for us to get reparations. They don't come out and fight for us. We've lost 14 million acres of property since the 1950s. No white liberal allies are on the street about that. We have less homes now than we did during the days of Jim Crow, meaning my grandparents and great-grandparents are doing better or did better than me. No white liberal outrage about that. But the moment they feel we can get access to abortion, they come out in droves about that. And you have to wonder why. Also, on both sides, I don't like to say pro-life because Republicans are not pro-life. They're pro-birth. They don't care about the quality of life. I have policies that are going to make life better. They just want people to be born and then die as soon as you're born because they don't care about what you do after you're born. But I want to say the majority of abortion clinics are located in black neighborhoods. Now, why is that? Why can't they put well-paying jobs in our community? Why can't they put good schools in our community? Why can't they put government facilities giving access to resources in our community? Why can't they put quality, affordable houses in our community? Why can't they put cheap land that they can grant, that they can give to us because we're older, but at least for us to buy in our community? We don't even have clean water in a lot of our communities, but they can put abortion clinics in our community. If people don't find that strange, something is wrong. I have my great-grandaunt. I want to talk about some of our people on the left. I have a great-grandaunt. Her name was Aunt Nancy. And I used to love it when she would let me feed the chickens. They used to get the corn, and it looks like she just used to sprinkle them all over the place, but she had a system to it. She had a system to it. I guess they used to, we used to grow the rice here in the Gullah area, so they know how to throw the rice chaff off and all that things like that. When I would feed the chickens, my cousins and I, the corn would go all over the place, and the chickens would go wild. And she would fuss with me and take the bag, and she would do it. That is almost what the media does to us. Instead of us focusing on our real issues like reparations, they throw these little distractions. Oh, abortion, there you go. Oh, transgender issues, there you go. Oh, there you go. And we just scatter all over the place. I need my people on the left to realize that you ain't left enough if you don't support abortion. If you do not support reparations, and reparations first and foremost. That's the most important issue we have right now as Black Americans, freedmen.
Now, I want to thank you for coming on, Marcel. We really could go on and on and on with this conversation. In my mind, I have so many other not rebuttals, but just kind of reactions and ways in which we could carry on this conversation, especially around abortion. Because I believe you stated it already. Since 1973, if I'm not mistaken, 20 million Black Americans have been aborted. I don't think that a lot of us have taken the time to wrap our minds around how negatively that's actually affected us. When you're talking about voting power, when you're talking about just resources that you could have gotten in certain communities through the census, just through your population number being higher up, there's that's such a deep rabbit hole we can go down right now, but I'm not going to do that. That's for another time in another video. I want to thank you for coming on. Let the people know how they can reach you. And also for the brothers and sisters who are in South Carolina, how can they register to vote so that they can make sure to go out and vote for you?
Okay, so I'm going to do it backwards. The people in South Carolina, they can go to the website, and I wish I could write it down, but it's called scvotes.gov, and they can do it online or by mail. scvotes.gov. And to reach me, I do check my email. I get a lot of emails when people donate to me, and I'm going to get to that. I don't always respond to that, but I promise people I see every single message of encouragement that people see me. I read every one, and I appreciate it deeply, 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 and I mean that. But they can also reach me via email, which is repairblackAmerica@marcelforcongress.com. repairblackAmerica@marcelforcongress.com. Also, if people really, really want to help me, people in South Carolina especially, if you could email me your name, let me know which part of South Carolina you're in. I can use good people here on the ground. The most important thing that I need right now are donations. And I say to people, if I get even $5 from 500 people a month, each month, that'd be $2,500. No, I'm sorry, it'll be more than that. That would be close to $4,000, give or take some. There's a reason why I don't teach math. And people can donate at marcelforcongress.com/donate. I need all the donations that I can get because I'm at a point now where it's already been confirmed that the person against whom I'm running, Clyburn, knows about me. His grandson has confirmed it. One of his closest family friends have concerned it. He knows about me. Some of his old troll farms are after me. I'm to a point now where I have momentum, but in order to keep it going, I have to let the people of my district know about me. That costs money. I have to buy the robocall system, robotext system. I have to buy voter data, and I have printed materials that I want to send to all 456,000 registered voters in my district. And I found out the number has increased, and that takes money. And my primary is June 14th, 2022. So I don't have much time. I've already won this. Okay? Me winning is not a question. I've won this already, but I got to get elected, if you get what I mean. So that's what I would say to people.
Yes, people, please make it a point to go out and donate to Marcel if you support and want to see him win. Even if you're outside of South Carolina, obviously Marcel can use all the donations that he can get. I know a lot of times when it comes to money, people get a little funny, but at the end of the day, the way our world is structured, nothing moves without money. That's just a fact of the matter. So please make sure you donate to Marcel. I'll make sure to have all the links in the description below concerning donations, concerning how you can contact him. And that pretty much sums it up for today's interview. Like I said, I can keep going on and on. There's so much to discuss. And I'll definitely make it a point to have you on again so we can touch on a couple more issues. But that sums it up for today's interview. Marcel, brother, thank you for joining me today on today's show. And all of you for watching, thank you for watching. Have a very, very great day. And we'll have Marcel on a later date. That I can assure you.